Carlos Gutierrez, he's a former U.S. Secretary of Commerce. You are most welcome on my show. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
I saw a tweet for Secretary Anthony Blinken. He said U.S. citizen Bakir Namazi has arrived in Abu Dhabi for urgent medical treatment following his release from wrongful detention in Iran. We appreciate all those who contributed to his release, especially the Sultanate of Oman and the United Arab Emirates. How do you comment on this?
Well, the important thing is there a consequence? I think it's very positive that people are coming out, but the problem is if it's only we got them out, thank you very much. There's no reason for people to stop. For example, I'll give you another country, totally different country.
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela just had a prisoner swap.
Mm-hmm.
6 Americans were in Venezuela and 2 were in jail in the U.S. People who had sold drugs, it was very clear. They made the switch. So what that means is that hostages from the U.S. will be very easy to use in the future because the only consequence is we make a deal.
Yeah, but I mean here the question is about the role of Oman and UAE as important allies to the US. So how do you see their role in taking care of Americans, citizens on their in their territories?
Well, they obviously play an important role. Look, I'm on a board that has a plant, a factory, a big natural gas business in Oman. It's a very friendly place to do business. Mm-hmm. I have never heard of anyone being threatened. So I think there is that protection that built in the society. I feel very safe there. I've never had a problem, and I've been there several times.
What about the United Arab Emirates?
I have less experience there, but I think also these tend to be places that are small. There's very little crime. A lot of immigrants and they blend in, they do their job, but I would not have hesitation to recommend that somebody go there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Perfect. I'm going to observe your Twitter account. I see that you said Afghan refugees will make a contribution to any country, shouldn't be left behind. How do you evaluate the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and what is your approach here?
Well, you know what's happening is that when people think about, say, Ukraine, and they think about Afghanistan, they view immigrants differently. Maybe they're less educated in Afghanistan. Maybe they won't blend in as much. But Ukrainians, they look like Americans. They look like people here. A lot of them have university degrees. So a bias can very easily get into our immigration policies and how we treat refugees. And my concern is that Afghanistan will feel the impact of that.
Mm-hmm. Another subject, you said Liz Cheney has served her country better than most members of Congress. She's a great example of what it means to put country above politics. Thank you for your service, Liz Cheney. How you felt like this? Yani, you are an admirer for her job, the way she is approaching Donald Trump. Can you elaborate more?
The interesting thing is that Liz Cheney, for me, is a little bit too conservative. But what she did took a lot of guts. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that the whole party is silent, except for those people who have said something. Donald Trump owns the Republican Party. And therefore, Republicans are silent about January the 6th, which was, I think it was a scandal. Mm-hmm. I mean, is there any debate? People are still debating whether it was a riot or whether it was an attack. It's ridiculous. So I give Liz Cheney credit for having the courage to come forward and say he is not a representative of the Republican Party. Now, what happened to her? She lost her job. I'm hoping that these people will be back, mm-hmm. because in the end, they were on the right side of history.
You said the U.S. citizens should be furious about the big lie and the attack on the Capitol. This makes Watergate look like child's play. Our institutions and public servants now have a chance to prove that no one is above the law. Is there anybody above the law here in the U.S.?
Well, until we address the problem that we have and all the legal issues, then we're going to find out the answer to that question. There's only one person who will be an example to answer that question, and that's President Trump.
Why?
Former President Trump. So right now there are a lot of legal issues going on, and we're going to test the strength of these institutions.
Let's go. I'm gonna go to some polls. According to a Gallup study published on Friday, a few days ago, according to the study, 38% of those surveyed announced their approval of Biden's work as head of state. Biden's job in the position opposed 59% of respondents. The rest did not respond. So this is what is considering Joe Biden popularity among his country's citizens. They said it has fallen to its lowest level. What do you think?
I think that, unfortunately, people were expecting more. People were expecting to see more. The idea of an Inflation Reduction Act, but people continue to see prices going up. So many things that President Trump reversed that President Biden could have immediately reversed himself, that he hasn't. The Asia-Pacific Free Trade Agreement, tariffs, which hurt U.S. businesses and U.S. consumers. He hasn't touched that. Mm-hmm. So I think what people are seeing is, you have one party over here who's saying, make America great again. And we want to protect American workers. And these trade deals haven't been good for us. And we think that illegal immigration is hurting our country and hurting our jobs. On the other hand, it seems like Democrats are running on abortion. And that's the only issue. It's not a complete platform. So in terms of the messaging, Democrats need a lot of work.
Yeah. In which way and how that affects the elections, the energy crisis, the inflation? This administration said they don't have solutions and they are struggling somehow. How this will reflect in the election, in the midterm?
Well, I think we're going to see it in the midterm. Everyone still has a different forecast, but I think there's going to be an issue in the Senate and potentially an issue in the House. We may surprise, but this could be a Republican sweep. And part of it is, as you said, 39% popularity is extremely low. And very often the elections go in the direction of approval of the president and his party. So I think it's going to be a tough November 4th, but we'll see.
Let's talk about foreign policy or foreign affairs. Do you think that the United States implicated Russia in Europe?
Well, that's also a good question. One of our problems is, in addition to having a problem with Russia right now, with Ukraine, we have gone ahead and picked the fight with China. So why would you want to pick two fights at the same time, especially when the priority is Russia? I think that is a big issue. And I think it is, I can't see a strategy to which that responds. Keeping our diplomats from going to the Olympics, what strategy does that follow? I have the impression that it's all about tactics, but that there isn't an overall foreign policy. How do we want the world to look? So it's a real problem. We have been careful with Russia and Ukraine. And I think what we have projected to the Russians, to Putin, is that we don't want war. And I understand that. Nobody wants war. But you recall that at the beginning, that's what Biden kept saying. We don't want war. We don't want war. Stop saying that, because that's exactly what motivates Russia.
What he
He,
have to do? What he have to do now? What do you suggest?
well, what he could have done and what he can still do is continue to supply Ukraine with the arms it wants. And that's probably, the limit to what we want to do, to help them defend themselves. We are choosing the arms. And in many cases, they're arms that can't hit Russia. And that way they can't say, well, they use U.S. arms, so they're really not. So it's like a U.S. attack on Russia because they were using U.S. arms. That is being avoided. And all those things just send a message that that we're not that serious. And it started out with remember when they asked him for planes, we said no planes, and because we don't want a war, and that just gives the Russians and Putin a lot of motivation.
More confidence to go further in his plan. Do you expect a direct confrontation between NATO and Russia?
Well, that is the question. Do I expect one? No. But it is so easy to say no because it's never happened. That type of Cold War, World War III type thing. But there's so many variables. What happens if a Russian missile hits Poland? Are we going to adopt them? Are we going to help them? Are we not? There are a lot of these variables that that can get in the way. For example, the annexed territories in Ukraine. If Ukraine bombs those territories, are they bombing Russia? If they use U.S. planes, are they bombing Russia because those territories have been annexed? Or is it an illegal annexation and therefore it's not considered a breach? But what's important is, what does Putin think? If he says, this is my territory, I am going to defend it. The other thing that some people have hypothesized is that there's a perception that it's not going as well as he thought, right? People think that Russia is on their back foot. Does that push Putin to be more aggressive with tactical nuclear weapons? Because he's up against the wall and he has to do something and he cannot lose.
But some analysts said that this is a bluff, and it's not the first time he bluffed it before in the past. So do you think he's bluffing?
For something like this, I think it's safer to say no. This is too important to be playing poker. I think we should assume and take him at his word, and be ready for his word. There's just too much at stake to say, oh, it's just a bluff. You just don't know. Everybody was saying at the beginning, he won't go for Ukraine. He won't go to Kyiv. That's out of the question. Well, we were wrong.
Another subject, my friend Fred Fleets, he wrote an article. He said yesterday, a decision by OPEC Plus, the 24-nation oil cartel to reduce oil production by 2 million barrels a day was a stunning rebuke to the Biden administration, who lobbied hard to prevent oil production cuts that could cause gas prices to soar in the months ahead. Your approach?
Well, again, it's policy. It's a matter of policy. We have oil in the U.S. We have gas in the U.S. The only reason why we're not taking full advantage of that is because of regulations that have been put in place by this administration. So our production is limited. Our demand is our ability to supply is limited because of all these new regulations that are always coming out. So why should we? It's interesting. We're mad at OPEC, but we're not mad at our regulations. We're willing to go to Venezuela and say, please, give us oil, instead of producing it ourselves. Global warming is global, so we might as well do it here because we think that we do it cleaner. So our energy policy is out of whack, and we're going to pay for it. What's happening is that regulations and the rhetoric is not aligned with reality. So we say, by 2040, all cars will be electric. No, that's not going to happen. One statistic that's interesting is today, 80% of energy is done by fossil fuels. In 2040, more than 15 years from now, the estimate is that it'll be about 78.
What does this indicate?
What it indicates is that all of the plans and all of the regulations that we are making because we believe that renewables are going to take over are not going to deliver, and our only fallback will be oil. But companies are producing less and less because they're being told not to produce. They're being given regulations. So we're going to find a point. I will make a projection. Oil prices over the next 5 years will be extremely high.
Do you think that United States can coexist and withstand the situation of the energy crisis?
Well, yes, because we have a lot of, we have a lot of oil and gas ourselves. We have refineries, but the way to do it is by letting producers produce. We didn't like the XL pipeline from Canada. Well, now we're bringing it in trucks, and trucks are more dangerous. Instead of going to Venezuela, my goodness, produce here in the Permian, in the Gulf of Mexico. We have the oil.
This can be a great solution. Another topic, Carlos, how the Biden administration views Iran's nuclear prospects. What are the intentions? What are the catalysts? How do you see that?
Well, look, if you follow the model of President Obama, there is absolute trust. There's trust but verify, but the assumption is that Iran will not commit to nuclear weapons. They will use nuclear capability for civil purpose, for peaceful purposes. That's a big assumption, and that's the assumption President Obama made. And today, especially Republicans are challenging that assumption. And everything I've seen and heard is that you go back to Mossadegh, when that coup was pulled off, Iran is not a friend of the U.S. So I think it's a very dangerous assumption, and we just need to be very careful. And of course, the agreement gives them money that they can spend on that. They can invest in that.
They can invest in terrorism, you mean?
No, or just building more nuclear weapons, or building nuclear weapons.
And supporting Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq, Houthis in Yemen. How do you approach Iran as the most biggest terrorist country in the world?
Well, that's the way the State Department would say Iran, North Korea. Even Cuba's on that list. So it's hard to understand how countries get on it. But yes, if you look at U.S. policy, Iran and North Korea are the two bad players according to policy.
So I have one more question. Mick Mulroy, he's former United States Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. He said the United States should be a key partner to our partners in the region, period. He means the Middle East. And he considered that the Biden administration had made many mistakes by withdrawing from the Middle East or putting giving more importance to other areas like China, you said, Russia. So does the Middle East still important, in your opinion, to the U.S. In general?
I would say yes, and if it isn't, it should be. One, because we have a lot of friends in the Middle East, and we shouldn't forget them. There's also the aspect of oil, which is an economic convenience that we have to be in favor of and look for. The bigger challenge is for everyone. How do we get Iran and the U.S. to the table, shake hands without fearing that in a couple of years Iran will have a nuclear weapon?
And it will be a danger for America's allies in the Middle East.
Saudi Arabia, it will be a danger for our allies and for the U.S.
Interesting.
And of course, that's the pressure that we get is those who are not friends of Iran in the region are telling us, hey, don't make a mistake here, because they will be the first to suffer.
Yeah. You were in Iraq. You have this palm on your desk, I mean, in your library. How was your experience in Iraq? In 1 minute.
My experience in Iraq was very revealing. I mean, the security was amazing. I was on a helicopter, and people were leaning out of the helicopter with a machine gun just in case somebody, shot a missile at us. It was democracy in Iraq became a little bit more popular, a little bit more institutional. But what we didn't see is that, as Colin Powell said, if you break it, you own it. And once we went into Iraq, that was our country. We had to take care of it. We had to fix it. And then the Iraqi army went into insurgency. And it was a lot more complicated than we ever imagined. Afghanistan as well. I've lived in Afghanistan a few times, and we were insisting and hoping that Afghanistan would become a democracy. That's a big assumption.
And this is a big failure. Thank you, Carlos Gutierrez, former U.S. Secretary of Commerce, for joining me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very grateful. It's been a pleasure.
Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.